In this video, we're going to be looking at how to create the axle peg for the miniature train project. Here I'm in an untitled design file. We need to start with a new component, and we'll give this component the name axle peg. I'm going to create a new sketch on the front plane, or the XZ plane, and I'm going to draw a profile that looks something like this. I'm going to do very similar like we did with the train wheel. And we're going to be revolving our profile around an axis. Now I've left the sketch open. I'm going to create a 3-point arc, and I'm going to choose the endpoints of the white dots here as this. Now I don't want to make this really rounded like this because it's going to create a tangent constraint, so I'm going to make it just a little bit flatter like this a little bit. Now one thing you're going to notice as I zoom out here is I do on this arc, here's the center point for that 3-point arc. And what I'm going to do just to set up a few constraints is I want to choose the coincident constraint, choosing the center point of that arc, and clicking on this vertical line. And that's going to make sure that I get a good arc set up there. Looking at some of the dimensions, I'm going to run the dimension tool, clicking from here to here. This is going to be 1/4 of an inch, and since I'm drawing half of the profile, I will go through and see 0.25 divided by 2. This will help scale the sketch down. I'm going to zoom in here just a little bit more to get the sketch back into view. And let me go ahead and bring this dimension up. I'm also going to go through and take a look at dimensioning from here to here. As noted, this is 0.422, and I'm going to divide that in half. The top section is going to be 0.25 divided by 2, and then I can start focusing on some of the heights. So from this horizontal line down to the bottom, this will be 1 inch. If your sketch moves like this, I'm going to cancel off the dimension tool, and I'm just going to drag the rest of that back up into place. The height here, if I focus on the top, so you'll see here I can still drag this down a little bit. From here to here, it's going to be 0.125. The height for this portion will be 0.031. And that's going to help provide that arc shape now that we have the center point there. And with those dimensions in, we're going to now be able to finish the sketch once we see it's fully constrained. We're going to take a look at revolving, and I'm going to choose that vertical line that runs along the y-axis as my axis to revolve around. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK. From here, I'm going to go ahead and create a new sketch on the top face, and I'll create the hex head that we'll put in. So I'm going to choose polygon, circumscribe polygon, choosing the origin as the center, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw the hexagon something like this. And I'm going to take the horizontal vertical constraint, and I'm going to choose this line right here to make that a horizontal line. And then I'm going to use the dimension tool, and between the flats, meaning from one side to the other, this is going to be 5/32. Finish the sketch. And now I can extrude, choosing that hex shape, dragging into there, negative 0.111, or 111 thousandths of an inch. And I can go ahead and say OK. I'm going to go ahead and use the chamfer tool. They note we need I'm going to have distance and angle selected. I'm going to choose the bottom edge, making that, it's going to be 45 degrees, but at a distance of 0.03 to chamfer the bottom. So you'll see that get applied. And then under create, I'm going to go to thread. Thread, I'm going to want to make sure that I choose toward the bottom of my thread, and it's going to cut threads in there. They're going to be modeled. If that box is not checked, go ahead and check it. And I'm going to uncheck the full length. So instead of going through and having our threading there, So you're going to see that here, the length of it from the bottom is going to be 0.394. We need to change that because we need a 1/4 inch offset to allow for our wheels to be able to spin on this axle peg. So 1/4 inch offset, that means the entire, and this bottom part is going to be 1 inch. So a 1/4 inch offset would make the entire thread length at 0.75. I'm going to go ahead, have that checked as modeled, and I'm going to go ahead and say, and you'll see it'll already pick up the designation 1/4 inch 20 UNC, and we're able to go through and say OK. This will now finish out the axle peg for the miniature train project.